The latest edition of Buffalo Bills Mock Draft Watch 2025. And for those that are unfamiliar with Mock Draft Watch, this is a roundup of mock drafts predicting who the Bills will select with their first round pick. Maddy has her Excel spreadsheet ready to rock as she catalogs any and all mock drafts in cyberspace.
Do it all. Somebody's gotta watch all these mock drafts happening, and so I'm happy to do it. So tomorrow is Mock Draft Watch 5.0. It's coming out in buffalobills.com. We're gonna do 10 total leading up to the draft. So we're halfway through. At the halfway point, I've tracked 74 to this point. We'll see if any more come out today. A few bigger ones came out today. We saw Matt Miller mock draft, a Charles Davis mock draft. So I always love seeing what some of those experts and analysts have to say. But in the latest one, Mock Draft Watch 5.0, there's 14 mock drafts included in that one, and we're starting to see a shift, Brownie. I've talked about before, lots of defensive linemen have been mocked to Buffalo, specifically defensive tackles. We're still seeing defensive line, defensive tackles as the favorite. 27 times a defensive tackle has been mocked to the Bills, 35 times a defensive lineman at that spot. But in the latest one, out of 14, corners is the favorite. 6 times a corner is heading to Buffalo with the 30th overall pick. 5 times a defensive tackle with the 30th overall pick.
All right. So that is a shift from what we discussed last week, which was largely D-line, D-line, D-line. So now defensive back is entering the mix here, primarily at the corner position. I know we've seen some safety here and there, but not as much as corner right now.
Not as much as corner right now. In the last 14, only one safety has been mocked to Buffalo, along with 1 wide receiver and 1 linebacker. So corners and defensive tackles are the favorites right now. Kenneth Grant, the defensive tackle out of Michigan, is the favorite for Buffalo right now, being mocked to the Bills 15 different times. Next is cornerback Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky 7 times. And then you've got a tie for a few different players that have been mocked to Buffalo 6 times. That's Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle out of Oregon, Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle out of Ole Miss, and Nick Emmanwori, the safety out of South Carolina. So those are kind of your top 3 in terms of favorites right there.
He's the one. Max Hairston is the corner from Kentucky.
Yep, corner from Kentucky.
Who ran the blazing 40 time at the combine, which was 4.28, which I think was the fastest
pretty
in the
good
class. Matthew Golden ran a 4.29, the Texas wide receiver. So, the skill set is impressive. It's interesting. I think, and we've discussed this, we were even talking about it yesterday, that with Pete Prisco, our guest yesterday, big people tend to get drafted sooner because there are less of them walking around that can play at a high level. And so I think the general feeling is when you're sitting there picking 30th, the chances of the value being good at the defensive tackle position is probably pretty low. And it's certainly going to be lower than the value at a position like corner, especially because you don't have a bounty of high-end corners. So in this draft, you could probably be looking, even if you stay at pick 30, at worst, I think you'd be looking at the 3rd best corner on the board. I think only 2 are probably off the board by 30. And with the injury concerns about Will Johnson, who's yet to test, maybe he slides even further than people believe, because a month and a half ago, he was like a top 12 pick. And now, because he still hasn't tested, people are wondering, does he slide a little bit? You could get a top 3 player at that position, even at pick 30, I think.
Yeah, so the question becomes, would you rather have a top 2 or 3 player at cornerback or safety at 30, or would you rather have a number 5, 6, 7, 8 player at defensive tackle? And this is where we don't know what their draft board looks like. We don't know how Brandon Beane has these players ranked. So it's a little bit of pick your poison. What would you rather have for Buffalo's defense if they decide to go defense in the first round. This is why we love talking about this stuff so much, because you could argue every which way about why they should do that over why they should do a defensive tackle over a corner or a safety over a corner. It all makes sense.
Bit of a programming note, we will be going into the cornerback class in depth with our good friend Greg Cosell tomorrow, who's been pounding the tape. So we'll have our senior producer from NFL Films joining us tomorrow as we tick off some of the top 5 to 7 prospects at the cornerback position in this year's draft class. There are a couple of names that we should probably go over who have been mocked to the Bills, not necessarily at corner, but at the safety position. Right. Nick Emmanwori is one of them. I know we've talked about him before. He is an elite physical traits player, and I'm going to be surprised if he's there at 30, right?
I would be surprised too, just because when you turn on the tape, this is somebody who possesses size and speed. 6'3", 220. We talked about the vertical yesterday, 43-inch vertical. He ran a 4.38. When you test like that, you jump up people's boards because you want fast, physical players on defense. That's what Nick Emmanwori is. He has a rare blend of size and speed. He knows how to use that. I think Emmanwori is a textbook tackler from what I saw. Emmanwori can also be used in the box or can match up with the tight end. So what you get is versatility with him. And I believe that Emmanwori can continue to grow as a safety as he enters his life as an NFL player.
Yeah, and I think his timing in terms of when he's entering the league is beneficial to him because of what he brings to the table, because we're seeing more and more teams using 3 safety sub-package looks in their nickel packages, and he can fill that role and still almost serve at times as a hybrid linebacker, where you're not worried about being too small on the field in case, they have an RPO and they change it to a run play. You still feel equipped to stop the run with a safety the size of Emmanwori, who can double as a hybrid linebacker. And, we were talking about Lance Zierlein's positional rankings. He had safety as the worst position in the draft, and I disagree with that. And this kid's a big reason why, because I think he's more than an elite skill set player. And proof of that is, in the last 2 years, 6 interceptions, 2 returned for touchdowns, and 10 pass breakups. The guy's making plays. Now, some of them have been just handed to him, like the interception our MSG viewers are watching right now. I mean, it looks like the quarterback threw it directly to him and nobody else. But still got to catch it, still got to make the play, and more often than not, he did. The other safety is Malaki Starks, who does not have the physical stature or even tested as well as Emmanwori. But for a center field free safety, it's kind of hard to top Starks.
Exactly. I think you could definitely do worse than Malaki Starks. He played at Georgia. You are getting a safety who has played against some of the best offenses, and when you dig deeper on what Georgia defenses do, they demand so much out of their defensive backs, similar to the Nick Saban era with Alabama and what they wanted their defensive backs to do. So Starks, I think, was asked to do quite a bit in Georgia's defense. And because of that, Starks has high IQ. I believe you can see that on the field. He's talented in coverage, knows how to use that length and speed. 6'1", 197, ran a 4.5. He had 6 interceptions in his career. I believe Starks offers you some versatility as well. I think with Starks, you have a good foundation of the physical traits, and it can grow at the next level. Doesn't jump out of the gym like a Nick Emmanwori, but I think you get a lot with Malaki Starks if that's who you're going after.
Yeah, and if you want to talk character, he is squeaky clean. Might be one of the cleanest players in the entire draft class. Comes from a great family, did not have the easiest of upbringings, made something of himself despite all that. And I think, to be fair to him, he was asked to play a position that I don't believe is his number 1 position. He had to play a lot of nickel corner for Georgia last year because of some of the losses they had on that side of the ball, and it's not his number 1 position. I think his number 1 position in the NFL is center field safety, and I think he'll be fantastic in that role if you do that with him exclusively. Last guy, very quickly, is, who did we have on the list? Oh, we had Golden, the receiver.
Yes.
I mean, really impressive, tested off the charts, ran a 4.29. So all the things you would want in a stretch the field type receiver, which is why a lot of Bills fans are gaga for him, but he's probably the second or third receiver off the board. If they're using Travis Hunter as a receiver, whoever
True.
drafts him, he's the third receiver off the board. I think Ted McMillan's probably the only guy that goes before him, and even that's not a sure thing.
Yeah, with Matthew Golden, you get the versatility. He can be a big play receiver, making those sideline catches, finding his way to the end zone. He can also be the guy that gets the short and intermediate routes. His work in the short and intermediate routes reminded me a lot of Khalil Shakir. He is a sure catcher and I think does a great job of finding yards after catch. I think Golden has an elite awareness of space, and because of that, he gets a lot of yak. 9 touchdowns last season. That was a career high for Golden. He is a speedster at the position, like you said, ran that 4.29. He's been the favorite wide receiver mocked to Buffalo, but do we see the Bills going wide receiver at number 30?
I'd be surprised if they do. The thing I like about him, he's got the clutch gene also. When they needed a play, Ewers was looking for him, and very often he delivered. Got to take a break here, though, as that is Bills Mock Draft Watch 5.0, which you can find on BuffaloBills.com tomorrow if you want more information on it in terms of who people are picking for the Bills at 30.